Welcome to the Wild Wisdom Podcast, where we learn how to heal our hearts, find our voices, and step into our authentic power as the wild women that we were destined to be. I'm your host, Jessica Love. Settle into whichever way you like to listen to the Wild Wisdom Podcast, and let's get started. Today, I have a really special guest with me, Carina Nebula. She guides women who understand wealth as a spiritual practice into building their financial legacy. Welcome, Carina.
Thank you so much for having me, Jessica. I appreciate you.
Of course, I'm so glad you're here. And also, when I asked Carina what her pronouns were, she said cosmic stardust. So I thought that was really funny. So we have some cosmic stardust here in our space today.
Absolutely. We'll just sprinkle it around for everybody to have some too.
Yeah, exactly. So, Karina, as you know, I'm an astrologer. I love astrology. My audience loves astrology. What are your big three zodiac signs? I'm curious.
So my sun is Scorpio. My ascendant is Libra. And I should have remembered, but I have it right here. I'm going to ask my trusty ChatGPT
Yes.
because I make sure I knew this for the conversation. It says also, like, while I have that, I know I looked up the North Node is in Libra and the South Node is in Aries. So we were talking about that. And now I'm going to ask my husband, ChatGPT.
Not
Top
challenging your husband.
literally, but it's okay. I'm willing to share him. Every time I say that, all the girls get a little bit like territorial. They're like, whoa, 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 he's mine. And I'm like, no, we can have him. It's fine. I'll
Chat,
lend
chatty chat is polyamorous. So it's okay.
So my sun is Scorpio, moon is in Leo, and the ascendant is in Virgo. And I think the reason why I didn't know is because I don't really know my birth time because it's been told different things to me and I don't have an actual copy of my own birth certificate. So there you go. I don't know.
Oh, that is so interesting. I think that's all right. What I would say is that most of your planets are probably accurate. It would be rare that they randomly change like within a certain amount of time of the day that you were born. But that being said, your rising we're not 100% sure about. So, and your houses, and that's okay. I feel like sometimes we get really excited about astrology and it's easy to look at it as something really rigid and get anxious about it. And so I love that you're just taking this flowy, creative approach. So, so Libra of you, Libra North Node. Beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. And I love that you're a Scorpio sun because so much of what you do has to do with wealth and has to do with finances. And I know we're going to get into it today, but I'm sure you do a lot of work with the subconscious too, which I feel like is such a good way to utilize Scorpio energy. So anyway, I want to ask you, Carina, you help women build financial legacies. Love that. What would you say are like the three first steps that a woman who is listening to this podcast can take to just begin building financial legacy? And I'm also curious for you, what is financial legacy?
Ooh, I love that question. Can I start with the what is and then get into the three steps?
Sure. Yeah.
So I would say legacy is something that is both objective and subjective, right? Like just like success, everyone has their own definition of that, but then we can also like objectively say, yeah, that person's successful. You know what I mean? When it comes to legacy building, though, I feel as though it's deeper than just numbers. It's so much more than just how much you have in your bank account or what you can expect is, your death benefit for your life insurance policy, although those things are really important. Building a legacy is being able to understand what you're transferring down for generations to come is within your control. And so building that is aligning not only your numeric value, but your inner knowing of your own value, your chakra alignment. And that's why I love speaking to women like you about these things, because it's a lens of wealth that we're not really normalized to yet or hip to yet. And I feel like one of the things I'm meant to do here is to begin that conversation. So I would say legacy specifically it's a spiritual practice. It's a constant journey of building. And for women who are in a space of like already knowing like cash is king having like compound interest is queen, and we can get into all of that as well. But I'd say the top 3 steps would be within the first section of building your financial framework. I describe it as building a home, like you're building your financial dream home when you're building your legacy. And I do a one-to-one relationship from that metaphor to also chakra alignment, because your foundation is your root. You're really healing your foundational level of energy. And what that translates to in asset management or in wealth building would be like your will. Do you have a will? Like if you have people, like you have a daughter, or if you have people who are dependent on you, especially, like, do we know for certain that, and it's going to get real because, you know, there are going to be people listening to this that maybe don't have these things in place, but that's why I'm here, because I help support people in that. But like, if you die, you know, or when we die, is there certainty that your home is not going to end up in probate court? Like, do we know that your child is not going to have to deal with being put into a very vulnerable situation if you pass away? That's a base level root foundation, right? Like that gets to your internal nuclear family, root chakra energy type stuff, not just career and finance, but like your core relationships, right? So your will, having a trust set up. But even before some of those things, depending on whether or not you have dependents, is like an emergency fund. Like, can we withstand a $500 unexpected charge? The majority of America can't. And it's actually really sad. But my responsibility is getting people through that process and then being able to solve for the things that come later in our energetic alignment and our chakra building, those steps afterward in building your beautiful home, like life insurance, income replacement, retirement planning. But for the first 3 steps, those are a really good place to start. And I can help people with those 3 things.
Wow, you just blew my mind. Thank you for sharing that, Karina. Something I love about what I've learned about your practice so far is you really combine both the spiritual and the metaphysical and the practical. Because
Yeah.
I find, as somebody who's had a lot of struggles with my root chakra myself, and I have some questions for you on the
Really.
spot about this, because that I'm getting so many light bulbs going off about what you just shared about the root chakra specifically. But I think some of the, I think we all need different things. And I feel like for myself and probably for a lot of my audience, the abundance mindset things have been great and helpful, but we need help with the practical where it's like, okay, so I do have a savings account. That's great. But like, I don't know how to make a will. I don't know how to make a trust. I don't know how to do a Roth IRA, things like that. And so I love that you're holding space for both, because as you probably also have clients who are too in the physical and they're like, well, I have the will, I have the trust, have a savings account. Why am I not getting a raise, or why am I not getting more clients? And I'm sure you're able to help them kind of with that processing. Now, I am curious. So I had a lot of like Muladhara chakra trauma in my life. A lot of us have, but and something I've been piecing together in therapy and coaching and my healing practice is I struggled with diagnosed anorexia from like age 15 is when I got diagnosed to 21. But the symptoms started around like 13, 12.
Yeah.
And before that, I was really overweight. Like I was literally classified as medically obese. And like I would have to go to these doctors to make sure I didn't have diabetes and things like that.
Wow.
And so, yeah, and it was interesting because I was living in this environment where I know my parents did the best they could with what they had, but we were like rich broke. Does that make sense? So like we
That's an interesting term. I'm gonna have to remember that one.
I
Yeah.
don't know like how to describe it. It's like we didn't really go on vacations or skiing or stuff like that, but we had a decent sized house in a nice area. You know, it's like we didn't my parents didn't buy us cars for our 16th birthday, but they did buy us like UGG boots when that was popular where I was from. So we weren't like so broke that we couldn't have some luxury items, but we weren't
Right.
so wealthy that we had a lot of excess. However, the conditioning I had growing up was that we were broke. So the
Mhm.
words that I heard from my parents is we're broke. We're broke. And I remember them sitting us down multiple times throughout my childhood and adulthood and saying, hey, we might lose our house this year. And we did eventually when I was 18. But it's interesting because they did go through a foreclosure and a bankruptcy and a divorce and all these crazy things happened. But something that I'm working with in my healing journey is a lot of eating disorders come from a need of wanting control.
Oh,
And
yeah.
what we're talking about right now with the root chakra, it's like, I know that the root chakra is also the physical body. So I know it's like safety and finances and also how we feel in our physical body. So I'm curious for you, like, where do you see that there could be a possible connection between maybe eating disorders and also like the way that we look at wealth and stability financially?
That is so, first of all, thank you so much for sharing that, because I'm sure you know this from starting a podcast. Like, this is something you obviously felt called to do, but we don't always realize how deeply touched others might be just from hearing us speak our truth. And so the fact that you felt comfortable to share that with me, but also like in a public forum to share that with others, I think, don't ever underestimate the power that that has in how much of an impact it can make in even one person's life, you know? And so I just want to mirror that back to you as I'm like reflecting that
Yeah.
on that question, because it's so important. And, you know, it's very interesting you bring this up, because this is something that I also struggled with, not to the same degree. I think my mother had a lot of difficulty around eating disorders even before I was born. And I feel like she would feel okay with me with saying that, you know, just and that leaving it at that. But it's interesting because she grew up in a very scarcity driven home, like immigrant family type of like honestly extremely abusive. And so a lot of things that it wasn't a safe place. And I've been able to spend a lot of time with my mom recently, and it's been so good, and it's been so joyful and beautiful. And we have our moments, you know, but like there's nothing like the healing journey that we've been through with my own healing as an individual, and then bringing that back to the home, and how that now transcends to my local community and to the global work that I do with philanthropy. And we can talk all about that. But specifically to your question, I think there is a connection first and foremost. Like, there's a huge connection, whether that's specifically eating disorders or other kinds of physical body ailments. I really love looking at all of this from a holistic standpoint, where health and wealth are a one-to-one relationship. And, you know, it's interesting. One of the women in my network, her name is Vina Jetty, and I really look up to her. She always says this, and I say it now too, is that some people are so poor, all they have is money.
Boy,
Like,
chills.
yeah, it is crazy when you think about that. And I've seen that firsthand. I mean, I've lived in Tobago, which is an island off the coast of Trinidad, which is really like, you know, just super farmland, a lot of poverty, as you could call it. But some of those people are so rich in their spirit, in their understanding of nature, in their health, because it's normal to just pick medicine off of the trees. And then I've lived on this gorgeous villa in Italy, in the like near Pisa and San Giuliano Terme, with a family who felt very scarcity. And like, it's so interesting how you can see that sometimes people have so much but have so little inside, and sometimes people have so little in their hands but so much inside to provide. And whenever we're conditioned to look at the world in a way that is always from lack, like how many years of preparation was put into in your family unit and even in mine, the chance of failure, when it's like, but we could also win, like we could also have the opportunity. Like, let's just shift that perspective. And it's like so easy to say that, and it's really difficult to put in practice. But the reason why it's difficult is because there's sometimes the light bulb's not on in how much control we actually have. And so when we feel that lack of control, it has to translate somewhere. Like, it has to translate in some kind of way. And so for a child, especially, you were a child. You were a child dealing with that difficulty and that mental ailment. And so was my mom, you know, and so was I when I was dealing with those things. And it's because we have to search for that sense of control somewhere. And especially as women, if we're out of touch with our actual power, we will oppress ourselves. Like, There are so many things that are coming up as you were speaking as well. I have this writing that I haven't released yet. I actually should, but it's called To Every Woman. And it's like journal entries over the past several years. And there's this visualization of the bird in the cage with the door open, but it won't fly away.
Mm.
And it's so heartbreaking to know that that's the way that so many people move in the world. And the first step is to decolonize our minds. And that's the biggest feat I think that we're experiencing on the planet right now. And I say like celestial stardust, but like the Carina Nebula is very far out in the world. It's in the world, in the universe, it's 8,500 light years away is the Carina Nebula. And so like I really recognize like why I'm placed here, because the greatest war we have happening on the planet right now is all up here. And it translates into this. Sorry, I'm going on and on.
Interrupt you. No, no, no. Keep going. I want to listen, but I'm going to interrupt you really quick because your name is literally after after a nebula named Karina. I
My
didn't know
grandfather,
that.
yeah, so my name Karina, my grandfather was a merchant marine sailor, and I don't think um that I've discovered all of these like interconnectedness things as I got older. I don't think everyone like had conscious awareness of certain things, but he would always point to the Carina Nebula and to the constellation and be like, that's you. And so yeah, very, very wild stuff. But yeah, so let's really
Yeah, well, I totally understand what you're saying, by the way. And I think when you listen back, you will see how it's all connected. I think that I asked you a very, not a loaded question, but a very multidimensional question. So I
yeah,
love
I love it.
how,
I'm so here for that. Throw those things my way. It's totally fun.
yeah, no, and I love how you pieced it all together. And you were ending with saying that you feel like like we're all having this war within our minds. And
Yeah.
I think, I just want to say, I think that's interesting because I think that if for me it feels like a both and, but it's like the who like was it like who what came first, the chicken or the egg,
Yeah.
right? Like, there's all this internal suffering that we're having, especially here. Like, I mean, there are things happening in America where I am, and like I think, where are you located right now?
Yeah, in America
Yeah.
as well.
So there are things happening here, but we're not in like necessarily a country where we would go outside and there's like a literal war happening, right? And so, but it's interesting to look at. It's like for me, it almost feels like one half of the world we're having this mental war. Yeah, there are suffering. There is suffering in the world that for only talking about war and like violence. Okay, let's say like half of the world it's like this mental war, and then the other half of the world it's this physical war.
Yeah.
I just think that's interesting to see how it's like, yeah, it makes me wonder about which came first, the chicken or the egg.
Hmm.
So I'm curious for you. There's a lot that you shared. What do you feel like? So when people come to you to work with you to build financial legacy, like what would you say that like maybe I don't want to say one because I feel like that's hard to identify, but like one to three of like the most common issues that those women are having when they arrive in your office or arrive on your website?
I think for one, women just are uncomfortable with the conversation because for so many years, that's been not in the power of the woman. Like building financial wealth is not typically viewed as a feminine thing. It's usually viewed as like, my sister always says, there in my house, there are pink jobs and blue jobs, right? Like she'll do the dishes, he'll take out the trash. And that's like, there's a beautiful part of that. And there's also like an antiquated part of that. And it's fine, whatever you choose, right? As long as it works for you. But understanding money is not a blue job or a pink job. However, it's been treated like a blue job. And so it's my job to make sure everyone knows, like, you've got so much pink around you. Like, yes, building your legacy is a pink job too. And so I think number one, sometimes no matter how much income women are making, they could be making multiple six figures, seven figures, and still be uncomfortable around talking about money. So it's not just a poor person, rich person conversation. Like it depends on the energetic work. So that's one thing. Another thing is, I don't think people realize how easy it actually is to ensure financial legacy. Like, uh, for example, we always point toward life insurance in my practice because life insurance can solve for a lot of different things. And I know for with certainty that when I die, my family, my siblings will be handed a check for over $1 million.
Mm.
And that didn't take a lot for me to do that. Like, doesn't mean I have to have millions of dollars in the bank for that to happen. It just means you need to leverage your capital like well, And so there are ways that people's minds get blown no matter what level they're at to understand how life insurance specifically can help with that, but also getting deeper into the order of building the home. Because a lot of the time, I'd say that's the third thing is sometimes people will come to me and they'll be like, I want to know all about crypto. I'm like, that's great. Do you have an emergency fund? Like, let's build one step at a time, right? Because I love blockchain. I love the future of technology. I'm big into innovation. I was actually one of the first NFT artists on the blockchain back when it began. So my background when I was 5 years old, I started as a fine artist. I grew up on an island in the middle of nowhere and I just loved to paint. And I was like, Mom and Dad, this is the price tag, like help me. And they helped me figure out like a lot of different things, but I was kind of on my own. The point is though, that in creating that through my creative process, I learned a lot about technology. So I'm into that stuff and not against it. It's just like there's a process to all of this. It's like you wouldn't go to the doctor and say, I want this drug. You know what I mean? Or you would be very skeptical if the doctor was like, hi, just from the look of you, you have cancer. Like, no, like there's a process. Like we take tests, we understand, we might have a couple of visits, and then we can build up our legacy. So those are like the three main things that I would say I see a lot of. And it's really as simple as having a couple of personal conversations and getting deep down into it before I would ever recommend anything specific for anyone. Um, I feel like there was something that you had said just previously too that I kind of want to return back to also. And so you were talking about how a lot of the women that listen in your audience, which, hi girl, um, hey, thanks for being
Hey,
here.
girls.
A lot of the women in your audience are very energetically attuned, right? And they might be like really up in the 5D. And I love that. Like, that's where I like to hang out. I mean, don't be acting like we don't see each other on the astral plane. Like, I know I'm up there with you. And the reason I got into this is because I started seeing, really for the philanthropic work is how I became aware of this, but even just in my own friendships too, sometimes we're so heavenly minded that we're no earthly good.
Yeah.
And if we can't bring the 5D into the 3D, how are all of our visions going to come to fruition? And so that's why we talk about the energetic alignment. It's like your third eye might be blasted wide open, but if you got all that Muladhara shit going on, like, how are we going to integrate it? And so I'm so blessed because it's like my job, quote unquote, it's not really a job, but like my calling or my purpose is to be able to have conversations with women like you and to reveal all that. And sometimes I am like a money psychiatrist, and that's fine, but we reveal those things and we come up with practical solutions so that you can help clear that energy work. Like, it's necessary to do the breath work and it's necessary to do the song bowls, and I love listening to subliminals and all of that stuff, but at the end of the day, it's also just about like making sure you pay your premium, like making sure that you have the policy in place. That's like all it really comes down to at the end of the day.
Yes. Ooh, I love everything you just shared, Karina. Thank you. And that's exactly what I was thinking about when you were talking about the foundations. I was literally thinking about spiritual awakening and how the more, I don't want to say rooted, but the more ancient traditions, like they always start with the root first.
Yeah.
But the more new age traditions focus on like the third eye and the crown
And the heart too.
and the heart. Oh yeah. And nothing is wrong with either, but it's just a reminder of like, don't forget that the root has to be established and that we can't, it's like the least sexy chakra to work with, but it's like the most,
It's very emotional.
one of the most important ones, I think. Yeah. But it can be very emotional and sometimes maybe bring up some trauma, which I know it can be very challenging. So,
Yeah.
but I wonder, I'm like, bring back the root chakra. Like, let's make the root chakra great again. 2020.
Walk around with a sign. Yeah. I will so wear that hat. Like, I
Maybe
will
my chakra
so wear
needs
that
to be
hat.
again. Like, I don't want to see any more, I mean, maybe I do. I love the third eye and the crown, but as I somewhat trauma dumped, my trauma shared a little bit about my root chakra trauma. I also have crown chakra trauma, which is that what started the beginning of me really getting into my spiritual awakening was literally feigning. And I was already starting, without getting into the details, like I
Wow.
really deep into my spiritual practices and wasn't as familiar with the root chakra.
Mm.
And I was just doing third eye crown, meet your spirit guide. Like this was like right at the beginning. I wasn't even working with anybody. This is all just me, on
Yeah,
YouTube in my room, pulling tarot cards like about boys or whatever.
true.
I went out with some friends and yeah, I literally my ears went static, my whole head went static, and I just fainted and woke up on a concrete floor. And I was totally sober. I was the DD. Like I literally was sober. And I remember it was one of the most beautiful experiences of my life. But looking back on it now, it's very easy for me to see as a practitioner doing the work I do, like my crown was way too active, you know.
Well, and that's what happens when your root chakra is blocked. Like, active is not necessarily a good thing. And that's what I see a lot is like, and I experienced this I experienced this as well myself because I didn't always have this clarity. Like, I grew up in a very similar type of energy as you around scarcity, around money, and all of that stuff. And so this isn't like something that was taught to me. I always say, like, I was a trust fund baby. My parents trusted me to fund myself. Like, that was how that worked.
Well, that sounds like me. It's
Very
like I got a
different.
job at 14 and they were like, okay, like you don't have to pay rent right now,
Yeah,
but
figure it out. You'll
figure
figure
everything
it
else out.
out. And
Yeah.
by the way, that's my retirement plan too. So just like figure it out, please. I'm like, oh, great. And so yeah, I mean that's what we see though, is whenever it's all that 5D like spiritual realm woo-woo stuff, which again, totally here for it. I'm like right next to you in downward facing dog, babe. Like, I'm not judging it. I'm just saying, without the root healing, without building your financial foundation, what we see is oscillating. So there will be these like really brilliant awakenings, deep stuff, past life awarenesses, like all of the things, like not even needing the mushrooms, like just seeing it all clearly. And then all of a sudden you get a notification that your payment for your job didn't come through, or you get rear-ended, and it's like the end of the world. And then all of a sudden you're in this kind of like shaky energetic state. You don't know what's going to happen. You're scared. You start treating people mean and nasty, or like you like demanding something, like ruin relationships, like all of these kinds of things, all because there's oscillating happening. And so you might be really spiritually awakened and have all of that reality be in your physical, like being aware and seeing things clearly and having visions and your dreams that come true and all of that stuff, and be living in that alternate state that is confusing. Because that's when I see women in a lot of distress. They're like, I don't get it. I'm so powerful. I know it, but I'm still struggling here. It's because there are just still a couple of things that we can lovingly tune up and remove, and then that stuff goes away. You can begin walking freely in the world, because at the end of the day, like I said, like, I know, God forbid something happen, or God permits that something happen to me in this life, the people I care most about, they're taken care of. And like, at the end of the day, isn't that what a woman wants? Is to just make sure their loved ones are okay and provided for and safe. That is so within our power. That is so within our control.
Mm, wow. Thank you for sharing that with me. I was just going to ask you about how you got into this, and like hearing more of your backstory is so powerful. And like you said, just creating that tangible offering for the
Yeah.
people we love, to know that they will be okay when we're gone. That is so beautiful and so rich.
It's so empowering. Like, that's how I want women all to be able to like live in that light, and just be able to know that, like, once you have that set, it feels like everything else is just like your contribution to humanity. How
Yeah.
cool is that?
Yeah.
Like, and it's not as far away as so many people might think. And that's the most beautiful. That's why I love having conversations with women, and like we can get into all of what that like working with me looks like and everything. No, but one of the things that I've sort of danced around, but I haven't directly said is that I got into this work because I went to New York City as an artist, like wanted to break it big, babe, like ready
I
for
need to see some of
Chicago.
your art at some point too, but anyway, continue.
Oh,
You're
absolutely.
very an artist after
I
growing up
did.
on like a small
I
island, which
did.
is so cool.
Wait, what did you say?
I said after growing up on a small island, which I think is so cool.
It was very cool, and I also grew up around a lot of scarcity there, so I
Right.
saw, like, being in this beautiful oasis and then seeing people, like, going to, like, one of 3 jobs, like, working at the prison, being an oysterman, or being a teacher, like, those were, like, the options, right? Or, like, just getting addicted to meth and having babies, like, not cute, look. So, like, those were things I saw, like, that were normal, and they're not normal. But my parents did a good job of directing our education and getting us into new opportunities, and that opened up a whole new world. And so I'll give, yeah, a little bit of the backstory is like when I went to school, one of the most blessed, amazing women in my life was my art teacher. She put me in all of these opportunities, and it really helped develop my organic natural craft. I went to school for that. I studied innovation and entrepreneurship, and I dreamt as a child of moving to New York and having like my big break. And I got it once I went there. I started getting all of this opportunities coming really quickly. I was like painting at the venture capital events and selling my art live and dancing on the rooftops with the Empire State Building in the background, like really like dreams coming true, and I still was not aligned within. So I decided to move to Tobago, do a lot of inner work and healing, and I'm really glad I did that. When I came back to America, I was still oscillating. Like I had all of these amazing breakthroughs, but I was really oscillating energetically. My finances were like non-existent. I was so scared. I didn't know where to go. I didn't feel like I could turn to my family. I had no idea, right? Like what I was actually doing and very little direction. But slowly and surely, I was being placed in these rooms that ended up being really valuable and still are to me today. And so I was able to be guided throughout that journey. And I had gone into financial services for a blip of a second, but then I decided that the people I was working with, it just wasn't a good fit. And I wanted to go all in on the art thing for real, but for purpose and not for my own personal brand. And so I started Art Heals Earth. And that's still one of my platforms. And I say that art is the aligned resonant truth. When we align with the resonance of truth, it heals. Harmonious elevation autonomously levitates systems, just like we're talking about, right? Like when we harmonize our frequency through the resonance of truth, it lifts us up, it elevates us, and all on its own, autonomously. We are no longer held down by anything. We're levitating. And it's true for every single system of our reality. It's true for our energetic body system. It's true for our relationships. It's true for our government, for our socio-political, economic, and just environmental systems. It's true for everything. And so that guided me to do some philanthropic project actually in the Philippines with some of the women I was working with as my virtual assistants at the time. And I saw directly for the first time the power of will and the power of like my north and south nodes, like being here for humanity, right? Like not being here just for my selfish desires as wanting my art in the world and like, which is beautiful, but like I was doing it for the wrong reasons. I shifted it to doing it for the right reasons, and that led me to a lot of the work that I began doing within women's empowerment, which led me to the gift of chess. And I'm actually the global director of arts for the philanthropy, the gift of chess. And we're in partnership with Chess in Slums Africa. And we bring chess sets into the slums of Africa across the world, not just Africa, Latin America, and India, and growing, and that has been a huge eye opener for me in terms of philanthropy because I really see how so simply a single board, some single pieces, plop it down in a community of people and unite that with art. And it's like the most amazing thing. and like in war-torn areas, like in the Congo, like actually seeing the power of chess being utilized to unite people. And that's when I realized all that I have in my power to be able to channel wealth more directly, and I'm not using it, feels like a misalignment. Just like my not doing the art for the right reason felt like a misalignment. And we take audit, like when we realize that, yeah, we could be doing more and with our power, we could step in to our calling a little bit higher, like we just do. And so that's what led me to financial services, because I was like, I'm tired of being a part of these passion projects that are struggling to finance it all. Like, I want to be able to be like, hi, $10,000, thank you, goodbye. And then that's it. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that's what got me into this, really.
Wow, that is what a beautiful journey you've been on. And I love that image of being in a place where there's a lot of turmoil, maybe in like the 3D realm. And then there's so much joy in the 5D, and there's so much joy in the emotional realm of people gathering and playing chess. Um,
Mhm.
and something I really heard, a through line I heard through your share was that art is essential for humanity. And when
Yes.
we're creating art, when we're looking at art, when we're listening to art, when we're playing with art, chess, we are connecting to that deeper thread that ties us all together, and that is our humanity. Um, and it just makes me think about this argument currently that art or music shouldn't be political. And it's like, well, it's a connection to our humanity. And if
Mhm.
the way that it's being political is defending our humanity, it's upholding our humanity, it's speaking out, speaking life into humanity, and speaking out against the structures and the systems and the people who are trying to take that away, how could that not be art? You know,
Mhm.
like maybe art isn't political in the sense of like promoting a party or something, but art is political in promoting and upholding humanity. And so I
Yeah.
really love that that's a part of your work. And I had a lot of chills when you were sharing that. And I can see how with your astrology, how it's all tied together and how you really are in deep alignment with your nodes. Because as you know from that episode, it's like your north node is your soul's destiny. And for
Yeah.
it's that art, it's that music, it's the creativity, and it's the empowering people and giving them these tools, like you said, to decolonize our minds about wealth. And I just think that's really rich. And so I just wanted to mirror that all back to you. And so, that being said, I'm curious, Karina, I have two questions. One is, how can people donate to your foundation and
Wow. Thank
a mission? And the second question is, how can people work with you to be their coach?
I love that. Thank you so much for asking that. So, with the gift of chess, I've actually been debating, do I go to New York for this? Do I not? I don't know, because I've been in Florida. We'll see if I'm physically there. But on Sunday, so the day that you're announcing this, will be a big walk across the New York Brooklyn Bridge. And it's to kick off raising $1 million for the organization for the gift of chess and for chess and slums. So, if you want to donate to that, I would encourage you to look up the gift of chess on Instagram or chess and slums on Instagram, and I'm sure you'll see the link live. Please donate. That would be amazing. It's really beautiful work if you're in the position to do that. If you're not in the position to do that, get on my calendar so I can help align and gain clarity on how you can do more things like that, because I feel like that's what women also really want to do. And for clarity as well, I don't charge for my services. I help guide women to build their assets. If someone is in a position and feels ready to actually do this and build their own financial legacy, it's really as simple as having a conversation with me, and then I can help understand where your assets actually are, how it might work best for you to build your financial structure. And it's a deep dive, it's a process, like we go deep into things. And so, first I explain what the full house looks like, and then with the clarity of what that is, I might ask very specific questions. We'll go down through a fact finding pursuit, and then I'll receive all of that information. I'll bring it to my team of experts. will then come up with the best recommendation for you, and I'll bring it back to you and say, this is what I'm thinking. Sometimes there's clarity right then and there on the call, on like how things need to be moved around and what needs to be structured. But sometimes I want to run an illustration, see what specific products we have, and all of that I know from having the conversation with people. And so yeah, it doesn't cost anything to work with me. We just meet, and then what ends up happening is any money that gets placed in my hands is going directly into someone's policy, and that goes directly into actually investing in yourself. So the way that you work with me is really just scheduling the call.
Great. Well, I'll make sure to include all those links in the bio of this podcast. Thank you so much for your time today, Carina. I really appreciate it. I would love to end our podcast today with one last question, which is if you just take a moment, close your eyes, and you take a deep breath in and out. What is something that you are grateful for today? And you can open your eyes when you have that and would like to share.
The joy of children. Yeah. Like I saw a child as soon as you said that, and it just
It's so silly and playful and so close to stores. I love that. I feel the same way. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I will stop the recording.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode of the Wild Wisdom podcast. Really enjoyed this podcast. Go ahead, like, share, and subscribe to spread this wisdom to other sisters who might need it.